whether it's California, Oregon, Washington, New York, New Jersey, you've got a lot of markets that are seeing, $1, $2, $3, $4 million residences with a lot of equity. I think it's a great strategy to convert that residence that otherwise you're not going to be able to shelter, make it an investment property, then do a 1031 out into another investment property.
According to Marcus and Millichap, John Shang, head of research, he said that there's an estimated $84 trillion that's set to pass from one generation to the next in the next 20 years. And this is known as the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet. In fact, 50% of the total net worth in America is tied to commercial real estate, high-end primary homes, and businesses, private equity, right? It's my understanding that the 1031 exchange only applies to investment real estate, essentially, right? Not primary homes or private equity businesses. But even more than that, even if it did, or you can somehow maintain a stepped up basis, it doesn't change the estate tax, right? So the estate tax, in other words, if you're worth more than 24 million married or 12 million single, essentially right now, that's set to cut in half, by the way, in 2026, it's subject to a 40% debt tax. So walk me through a scenario, Scott, where, you got a $100 million client. He owns apartment complexes, hotels. They're all inside of his taxable estate. He's not necessarily charitable giving. He doesn't want to buy a bunch of life insurance to try to offset it, right? And how's he going to get, he doesn't have 50 kids to gift it all away fast enough. How's he going to get it outside the taxable estate if he just waits in a 1031 and does a stepped up basis?
Somebody in that at those levels with today's, and I think you correctly point out, they're going to go down a lot more. So I think this issue is today in 2023 is a problem. When the thresholds are halved, just in a few short years, it's going to be an even bigger problem. The way you do that is you start gifting it away at the value of 100 million. I don't think that's going to be possible. I will just share with you a strategy, because you mentioned something there about primary residences. So let's look at somebody, La Jolla, California. They bought a house 30 years ago for 300 grand. Today it's worth $5 million. There is a provision in the code where you can actually convert that property that's your primary. You make it a rental property. You rent it out for, let's say, a year. Now you're going to convert that equity that was basically your primary residence. Let's say you're married. You use section 121 of the code, you exclude $500,000. There's $4.5 million of gain. Let's just say it's all gain. You can exchange out of that property now that it's an investment property, and you could take that capital and go into another investment property, buy a small apartment complex for $4.5 million. So we are seeing people convert equity that's tied up in their residence. Both coasts, you've got, whether it's California, Oregon, Washington, New York, New Jersey, you've got a lot of markets that are seeing, $1, $2, $3, $4 million residences with a lot of equity. I think it's a great strategy to convert that residence that otherwise you're not going to be able to shelter, make it an investment property, then do a 1031 out into another investment property. So, Brett, I didn't solve your problem of the guy with 100 million. I think there are issues there. And frankly, looking at things like buying a life insurance policy to offset some of those things, you've got to look at other strategies at that level. You've got to look at other ways to be creative to reduce your tax hit. I think you have to do that. But I think I got a partial solution, converting that residence equity that's way over the caps of 121. Look at some creative strategies to make an investment property. We see people doing that all the time. Let's just say you got an investor that doesn't have a big commercial portfolio, but they've got that $4 or $5 million home. That might be their retirement income. If they can convert that over, then they exchange into an apartment complex. That kicks off their retirement cash flow. So at a little bit of smaller numbers, let's say we're looking at somebody $4, $5, $6 million net worth, not 100 million. Now you've got a viable strategy to use 1031, combine it with the 121 code, and really get ahead financially.